The year 1964 was a wild time at the U.S. Mint. Because of a national coin shortage, the Denver Mint pumped out a massive number of pennies, over 3.7 billion coins. It was one of the highest mintage years in Lincoln cent history. Most 1964 D pennies were made for everyday circulation, nothing special, right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. A few ultra-rare varieties and errors slipped through the cracks, and they're worth serious money today. First up, repunched mint marks, RPMs. In 1964, mint marks were still hand-punched onto the dies. Sometimes workers accidentally struck the D twice, slightly off target, creating a clear double D effect. Collectors go crazy for clean RPM examples, especially ones in high grade. Double die obverse, DDO, and double die reverse, DDR, errors. If you look carefully, you might spot extra thickness or doubling on the words Liberty, In God We Trust, or United States of America. These double dies are highly collectible, and if you find a strong one, it could be worth hundreds or even thousands. But the ultimate find? Now, officially, the Mint says no special mint sets were made in 1964. And yet, a handful of super high-quality 1964 D pennies exist with sharp strikes, satin-like finishes, and perfect details. Experts believe these were experimental strikes or trial coins for mint officials. Only a few are known to exist, making them one of the rarest Lincoln cents ever discovered. So how much are these coins worth? A basic circulated 1964 D penny? Maybe just 2 cents. A 1964 D RPM error in high mint state condition. Up to $500 to $2,000. A strong DDO or DDR example. $1,000 or more depending on condition. But a true 1964 D SMS Lincoln cent. Hold onto your hats, because one sold for a jaw-dropping $30,000 at auction. That's right, one small penny, one giant payday. The 1968 D Lincoln cent is a fascinating piece of American coinage history. Minted at the Denver Mint, the D mint mark below the date stands for Denver, where over 2.8 billion of these pennies were produced. That's right, more than 2 billion. But despite its high mintage, some examples of the 1968 D penny can still be quite valuable today. The 1968 D penny belongs to the famous Lincoln Memorial Reverse Series, first introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. On the front, you have the familiar profile of President Lincoln, sculpted by Victor David Brenner. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial appears, designed by Frank Gasparo. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln between the columns of the memorial. Now, why is the 1968 D Lincoln cent important? Well, several factors come into play. First, while most 1968 D pennies are made from a bronze alloy, 95% copper and 5% zinc, their copper content alone makes them worth more than face value. In fact, because of rising metal prices, a single circulated 1968 D penny is often worth 2 to 3 cents just for its copper. But the real treasures are the high-grade coins. A 1968 D Lincoln cent in mint state condition, especially grades like MS65 red or higher, can be worth $20 to $100 or even more. In 2021, a stunning MS67 red example sold at auction for over $1,000. That's because coins in pristine, untouched condition are very rare, even from common dates. Collectors also hunt for errors on 1968 D pennies. Some examples include off-center strikes, die cracks, and doubled dies, where the design appears doubled due to a minting mistake. These errors can dramatically increase the value of a 1968 D penny, with some rare varieties selling for hundreds of dollars. The 1963 D Lincoln cent, this coin was minted at the Denver Mint, marked by the small D under the date. Over 1.7 billion were struck. The coin features the classic Lincoln wheat reverse, showing 2 wheat stalks surrounding the words 1 cent. This design, created by Victor David Brenner, had been used since 1909. In 1963, it was nearing the end of its era. Just 1 year later, the U.S. Mint would switch to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. In circulated condition, a 1963 D penny is mostly valued for its copper content. Since it's made of 95% copper, it's worth around 2 to 3 cents for its metal alone. But if you find a 1963 D in mint state condition, bright red with no scratches, it can be worth $5 to $25, and in ultra-high grades like MS67 red, it can even bring $500 or more at auction. Look for rare errors too, like off-center strikes and double dies, which can skyrocket the value. The 1961 D Lincoln cent, minted in Denver, had a massive production of over 1.75 billion coins. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this penny features the classic Lincoln portrait and the famous wheat reverse, as it was the second to last year before switching to the Lincoln Memorial design. Now, most 1961 D pennies are worth just a few cents, but error coins can be worth thousands. Collectors are hunting for incredible errors like 1961 D double die obverse, where Lincoln's date or lettering looks doubled. A strong example can easily sell for $2,000 to $7,500 at auction. Off-center strikes, if your penny's design is pushed way off-center, it could be worth $1,500 or more. Die caps and brockage errors, super rare mistakes where the coin looks smashed or mirrored, these freaks of nature can top $10,000 for serious collectors. Mint state, fully red 1961 D pennies without errors can also fetch $1,000 plus if graded MS67 RD or higher. The 1960 D Lincoln cent is an often overlooked coin, but it has its own special place in the history of U.S. coinage. Minted in Denver, the D mint mark below the date tells you that this coin was produced at the Denver Mint, where over 1.9 billion of these pennies were struck. Despite the high mintage, some of these coins are more valuable today than you might expect, especially when you understand the key factors that make certain examples worth big money. Let's start with the history. In 1960, the U.S. Mint was in the midst of transitioning from the wheat reverse design to the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which would appear later that same year in the 1960 P cent. The 1960 D penny still has the iconic wheat reverse, which had been in use since 1909. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this design shows two ears of wheat surrounding the words 1 cent on the back of the coin. The 1960 D Lincoln cent is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, which makes it worth more than just its face value due to the rising cost of copper. A circulated 1960 D penny typically has a value of about 2 to 3 cents just for its metal content. However, the real value comes from higher grade examples and error coins. If you come across a high-grade, uncirculated 1960 D penny, it can be worth $10 to $30 or even more, depending on its condition. Coins graded MS65 or higher could fetch between $50 and $100 at auction. Some coins in pristine, uncirculated condition and graded MS67 or better have sold for $200 to $300. Now, let's talk about the rare errors on the 1960 D penny that could make it worth $1,000 or more. The 1960 D double die obverse is the most famous error to look out for. If you find a penny with a double date or lettering, you could be holding a coin worth $2,000 to $10,000 plus, depending on its condition. Other errors like off-center strikes or die cracks can also significantly boost the value.